Welcome to the Four Visions Market Podcast, a space built on the principles of integrity and reciprocity. Together, we will engage in thought-provoking conversations about plant medicines, why these plants are coming out of the rainforests, jungles, and mountains after thousands of years, and what it means to be in right relationship with the ancestral wisdom cultures and guardians of these traditions. I'm your host, Mariah, founder and director of Four Visions Market. This podcast is the natural evolution in our commitment to providing you, our tribe, with incredible resources to support you on your healing journey through plant medicines. Welcome home. Welcome back, Four Visions familia. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the podcast. So happy to be here today, joined by a wonderful brother, Dev. It's a privilege and an honor to have you here with us. Thank you so much for coming.
It's such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I've admired your path and your journey of service for many years, and so happy to get to drop in together and have this conversation and learn a little bit more about who you are and your life mission, what you've dedicated your life to. And so, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about who you are for those who maybe aren't so familiar with your platform.
Yeah, cool. Well, my name is Dev. Our organization's called Life Force Academy, and it's Kundalini Yoga practices, really dharma practice, just exercises, meditations, tools to help people be happier and, help keep our bodies healthy, help keep our minds healthy. When we do that, most everything else tends to work out pretty nice. People all have their own unique path that's totally natural for each one of us. And so if you can get that basic alignment, easier said than done, of course. And there's layers upon layers upon layers that we, of course, discover that this life is all about. But basically, if the mind and the body, which are really just one thing, actually, one human organism, this is a good alignment. Mind is relatively happy, body is relatively healthy, and relative's the key word there, because I'm not saying like the mind is absolutely happy and ultimately happy and that we're in some state of supreme enlightenment. I'm not saying anything like that, but there's a basic sense of connection to who we are, to what our life is all about, even though things may be really tough. And so that type of disposition helps to sustain one along the path, their path, because it is inclusive of also the suffering that we're going to experience in life and the suffering that we're going to witness others experiencing in life. And that's not contradictory to us actually having a connection to our basic feeling of goodness. So that's what Life Force Academy is about. Something like this, yeah.
Harnessing our life force, our primal energy, and connecting to the source of creation.
Yes. Both our primal energy and the energy of expansiveness and our heavenly energy as well as primal energy. And those two things are the coordination together. It creates good alignment, connection to the earth, and then also connection to, we could use words like heavenly or heaven. It's not being used, at least I don't use in religious context. I try to speak as really secularly as possible, because we're all, especially in this melting pot of the modern world, we're all on slightly different paths. And even if you throw sometimes the word G-O-D, that means so many things to so many different people. So trying to unpack it in languaging that is relatable, to the cross-cultural boundaries as much as possible. I like that kind of stuff. And so when we say heavenly, for instance, what that also means is we're staying connected to our sense of inspiration in life, that we're staying connected to our creativity, that we're staying connected to our sense of purpose and love and these types of things. So it doesn't have to be in some far-out esoteric trip, although it can also be that. But, it meets people where they're at. And Life Force Academy, Life Force is the chi, the prana, the life force that when you take your first breath in life and comes in, and then one day you'll take your last breath and it goes out, and that life force then leaves the body, and this body is shed, and then something new begins. So the life force is that which is the sustaining force of keeps us alive, and is acts as like the great bridge between the mind and the body. And so therefore, when one works with their life force more directly, like what all the indigenous traditions around the world, all ancient peoples have their own concept of life force and understand it. And in our modern world, things are more dense, and a lot of the times, as a bigger population, we've lost sensitivity to life force. But the more now that we're increasing our sensitivity, the more we can actually work with it, and it's enjoyable, and it's actually an asset in life, and it allows us to live life with more ability to experience the things we all want to experience: love, purpose, prosperity, happiness. So that's the basic ideas. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
We're all needing those very tangible tools in this day and age to really nurture and bring us back into that place of connection and nourishing life force. And there's so many different ways to do that, right? There's so many different practices that we can utilize. And through your academy, you guys are offering so many incredible resources through classes and programs and ways for people to be able to do that. Can you share a little bit about the infrastructure of your organization? Maybe a little bit more about the backstory, how it developed and grew its wings and is now, full-fledgling of an organization?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it started just with my own experience as just a person who was, in a certain way, it kind of felt like it found me, although the first time I experienced Kundalini Yoga, I was an 18-year-old, and I hadn't done yoga or anything like that. I'd done, different types of psychedelics and plant medicine, and we didn't call it plant medicine back then, and where I grew up. Nowadays, that's what it is, and ended up going to study Ayurveda, which is also plant medicine, really, the whole thing. We all have come from this, these bodies of ours, we are like plants in a certain way. We're human beings, but we have this, reciprocal relationship with all the other species in life, and that's the beauty of it. It's amazing, actually. And so anyways, I encountered Kundalini Yoga. At that time in my life, I was definitely... I was trying to figure out how to live, trying to figure out how to feel good, trying to figure out how to feel confident, how to feel self-confident, as a young person I didn't feel like I could find my footing in the world that I was living in. And then boom, all of a sudden I had this experience where experiencing through simple yoga practices, all of a sudden, that's what it is. That's what I'm all about. And first, and I know so many folks, I'm sure, listening or watching have had these experiences, sometimes again and again, where you can almost feel like you're on the precipice of an enlightenment or something. It's like everything clicks together and makes sense. And like little did I realize at that point, though, it's just like, the very tip of the iceberg, and still I feel like I'm at the very tip of the iceberg because it's infinite. And there's nowhere really to get to. We're already here. And it's opening into that. So now I always talk much more about it's like a blossoming. You never blossom, no flower ever blossoms in a rush. Has its own time that's natural for it. So it's getting into the naturalness of life, and learning to appreciate this thing because it all ends. As we know it, our bodies are changing. And so it's being very present. So I know that's kind of keep swaying away from like what are the courses and the infrastructure, but that is really what is more important to me. And that's why the whole infrastructure is there. Is we teach all the tools, but they're simple. So it doesn't have to be deeply philosophical all the time. It's like sometimes you just got to use your breath. Put your body like this. Push this lever that way. Push that lever this way. And boom, all of a sudden, the anxiety is dissipated, or the depression has lightened, and it was just some exercises. And the life force lifted up, and you feel a vitality, and you feel all of a sudden, all the things that were causing me the depression haven't changed. They still broke up with me, or whatever the case may be. But it's no longer just so dismal, or so heavy, or so dense, or so tornado-like. all of a sudden the intensity or the electrical charge from that situation that is stimulating the depression or stimulating the insecurity, the electricity is kind of like it's lost its electricity, and while something else gained electricity, and that was sense of self. And you learn to kind of tap into your inner brilliance and your inner confidence that doesn't rely on the outer circumstances. That's Kundalini Yoga. That's what the Kundalini Yoga practices are so helpful at. And then, so that's kind of the foundational practices, but then the real kind of pillars of what Life Force Academy is Kundalini Yoga Ayurveda, which is the great healing art and science of ancient India. And in astrology, we call Yogic Astrology, but it's drawn off of the Indian Jyotish Vedic astrology. And we do all that. Not everybody who participates in Life Force Academy is studying Ayurveda and studying astrology, but they're all kind of doing some Kundalini Yoga, and really we're even using the Ayurveda and astrology really to support the bigger yogic process, which is the blossoming of a human being. That's why we're using it. We're not using the astrology, for instance, to, make big predictions for a person's life, although they can learn to do that if they want, more so to gain perspective on our life so that we can kind of see like this mythical language and apply it to our own heroic journey of our life. And that's the value of things. I think one of the great values of things like astrology, yoga, Ayurveda, is it gives us a language that when I say like, maybe I'm really feeling lousy and something is very difficult in life, and then I can get this other perspective on it where I'm seeing it from a planetary perspective or as a constellation perspective or a house, what they call bhava. Houses are the domains of life. And you can see, oh, this is transiting through here. And that's going to act, and no wonder I'm feeling so lonely, or no wonder I'm feeling such and such. But then you can also see how it's a bigger part of something greater that's going on. You can kind of see the great path before you if you have the eyes to see it. So that's what the combination of you do like these practices and meditations open up the field of awareness. Then, for instance, look at something like an astrology chart. You're looking at it with different eyes. And you're not looking at it like, because sometimes we'll get an astrology chart and somebody will look at a chart and we'll just a lot of us will do this. You kind of use it to prove like, see, I knew it.
Excuse our actions even.
Yeah, or like, I know I'm never going to get married, or I know, or like, see, this is why my love life is trash. I got a trash chart, No, you don't, you do not. Is actually everything is designed in some type of inconceivable perfection. You try to be rational about it, you lose it. But that's why it's nice to keep the life force opened up in the channels so that our perspectives aren't getting too habitually narrow. Occasionally narrow is everyone. We're going to have narrow perspective. We have sometimes, like one of my mentors, I always say, well, if I'm having a D- day, then this astrological placement is difficult, really difficult. But if I'm having a B+ day or even a B- day or something like that, it has this other whole expression. So it's very human, it's very compassionate. And that's what this is all about, is compassion. Compassion for the body, compassion for the mind, compassion for our own predicaments that we're in, compassion when we're honest with ourselves and we're really suffering. Even just being in the human body, we have to witness our loved ones passing away, it's painful, but it doesn't have to be suffering. Painful doesn't always have to turn into suffering. And the more that we're opening up to this bigger perspective, which can only happen via experience, that's why they call things like Kundalini Yoga secret. Because the real secrets are not secrets because somebody's keeping the secret from everyone else, although maybe people in places of power do try. But nobody can keep a secret like that because somebody's going to tell it to somebody else. And that secret's getting out, secret practices. So some of that, but the real secrets to me are the secret because they're based on experience. They can't be transferred from one person to another via just talking about it. You have to open it up yourself and nobody else can do that for you. And even plant medicines can only do so much for you. You still have to open those things up yourself. They might be able to show you how.
Yeah, no,
What do you
it's
think?
one door. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. So much potency there. Thank you so much for sharing all that. And I love the blossoming, because ultimately it's really what this path is about, is this, constant journey. It's infinite, as you said, and the more that we deepen in it, the more we see just how infinite it truly is.
Yes, we can't even fathom how good it is, or how good's the wrong word, because good's based on relativity, and when we're getting into this space, you're talking about like non-relativity somehow, and then that's when we have to let the words go and let the poetry enter,
So many of us get really caught up in this sense of urgency when we start a spiritual path, and there's this, desire to achieve, and we're so conditioned for that element of an endpoint and success, or even from our schooling, our education system, grades and evaluation and graduations, and we have to let that all go when we take a spiritual path, because there's no certification for this. The certification is life, and every day is the reflection of how much we're showing up and doing the work, and only in our each moment's sense of joy and ease and grace with each breath, and how we meet each experience that life gives to us, are we able to reap the fruits of what we're sowing. And so I really appreciate that element of like the tending to this ever unfolding process of the spiritual path, and the compassion too, recognizing that this journey is long, and if we really want to commit to this path of spirituality and self-introspection and self-honesty, self-integrity, it is this, peeling back of the layers of the onion, and we peel back one layer and we get to one level of depth and understanding, and then comes another wave of teachings, and it's really about paying attention to the mirrors that are happening in all around our lives, in each person that comes to us, in each life situation. I really see, this teaching of the mirrors is like a foundational pillar for the way in which I perceive life, and this sense of always being a student. And so I just love the way that you're speaking about these things, because it's really so universal. It's beyond like one lineage or one path. They're all the same path to the heights, to the heavens, to the celestial realm, connection with creation, the source of life. And this universality is really what's so beautiful about the ancient traditions too, and finding solace in whatever tradition or lineage resonates with each person. But the similarities always just bring me so much peace, I think, in a sense of, okay, yeah, this is just how it is, it's how it is here, and it was how it is in ancient India, and it was how it is for the Aboriginal peoples of Australia. It's just universal, right? And all these ancient peoples discovered their ways and their practices to find that place of connection. And I have so much respect for the Ayurveda too, because it is plant science, right? And it is nature in that way, and it is also one of these very preserved traditions that we have on the planet. And there's a lot of similarities, so many similarities between traditional indigenous botany and healing and Ayurveda. And one of the things that all of these ancient traditions and sciences really tend to is this wholeness and balance of body, mind, and spirit. And this is something that we've lost so much too in just Western medicine and our Western approach to wellness and healing. And so all of these ancient traditions are really just guiding us back to seeing that we can't have one without the other, and that there's this, there has to be this divine balance and nourishment of the three bodies, and tending to the three bodies to find that place of true wellness and optimum vitality. And so I love the three pillars, and hearing a little bit about the foundational structure for the Life Force Academy, because they tend to all three of the bodies. I can, hear sure. There's like that alignment there too. And it's really great just to hear about all these different tools and resources that are available to us, right? And they're just one door, they're just all doors to the same place. And this process of really tuning in and listening to the heart's calling of where we're called to learn, and where we're called, which body of work we're called to resonate and utilize as a framework for our spiritual growth and evolution. And the astrology is also so beautiful too, and utilizing it, like you said, as this tool, as this resource for self-introspection. And the Watoto people, the Mambe people, they also have these readings, and this is very interesting cosmovision of the Watoto people, and they do these readings based off of the person's birth date. It's similar in some ways to astrology, to Vedic or Western, but ultimately this element of giving tools that help us to navigate and orient to who we are and why we are this way, and to let it be a framework and a resource for us to work with the person that we are. And I feel like this is so helpful for people, you know, and so helpful for us in this process of getting to know who we are and getting to know what we're working with, what we're dealing with. You know, it's really hard to go on a path of healing blind. So sometimes having this framework of these different aspects of ourselves, or these tendencies that we have, or patterns that we have ingrained within the design of who we are, is so helpful to navigate and to utilize, to be able to walk our journey and resource ourselves in the path.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So did this framework for the 3 pillars come out of your own study, your own journey?
Yes.
And then it was basically utilized, and you built the platform off of your own personal studies?
Hey, Four Visions fam, taking a quick break from today's episode to share about a really special new Four Visions offering. For the last 6 months, we've been busy working intimately with our indigenous botanists in both Colombia and Brazil on the sourcing of a collection of rare Amazonian plants, roots, barks, flowers, and seeds. We just launched the Rainforest Herbal Apothecary. As we continue to deepen our mission of integrating ancient plant medicine into the modern world, we are humbled and grateful for the next evolution of our brand. Offering deep bows of gratitude for the sacred earth medicines and the blessed opportunity to share the healing power of nature with people from all over the world. We want to thank our indigenous cultivators, botanists, healers, and our incredible Four Visions team for bringing this vision to life. And of course, you, our Four Visions community, for inspiring us to continue growing. Visit our website to check out the Rainforest Herbal Apothecary today, with over 25 new, ancient botanical remedies in their raw form. Our prayer is that these new offerings support you in deepening your relationship with sacred plant teachers by having access to their raw form. We are so looking forward to sharing more about each and every one of these incredible plant allies over the coming months and deepening our education initiatives for our community. But for now, go explore the new collection and let the plants speak to you. And now, back to today's show.
Yes, yeah, that is true, and also, you know, it's already there. It's not that like yoga and Ayurveda and Jyotish are really separate things, and they never were separate traditionally either. They're really different limbs on the same tree, which makes it so nice, because you're really only, at the essence, you're only interacting with one system. And so if you learn the foundations of yoga, you already have foundations of Ayurveda, for instance. Ayus means life, and Veda is like the knowledge of life. That's what they call Ayurveda, science of life. But I always say art and science of life, because these are not just sciences, they're arts. And our Western, modern, kind of more materialistic mind tends to approach these things as they're like material, with like the mind you would approach a material science with, and that's okay. But these things require also intuition, and they require development and cultivation of intuition, and that's a life skill that's worth cultivating, because intuition is a person's inner guidance, it's inner GPS, it's how we stay connected to our hearts, how we maintain that bigger vantage point so our perspective doesn't get so narrow. It's not so much to me about peering into the future intuition. Intuition is about really being in the present and being able to feel and being able to utilize one's innate sensitivity as a strength and not as a weakness. Sensitivity is not a weakness. Sensitivity sometimes without containment or without enough nervous system strength and can feel like a weakness. But sensitivity is the superpower of a human being. You know, we're not bears with like thick fur. You know, we have this sensitive, tender skin. We're sensitive creatures. It's so easy to cut the skin. You know, and so, but then we create like big bombs and big ways of destroying things, really out of our insecurity. And so, and of course, it's more complex than that. You know, it's a whole human drama that's been going on for as long as we know. However, certainly it seems reasonable, it seems rational that the direction that we want to move is to less of that and more of this ability to experience ourselves as sensitive creatures that are interwoven with each other. And so what I'm doing to another, even in as the difficult thing, even in thought, you know, has a ripple effect. And so, but what I'm putting out as a ripple effect is also coming exactly back to me. Maybe not feeling in the same moment, or maybe in not some, you know, time and space that I could calculate. But definitely the basic physics of it is there, is that if I have a negative thought about someone, another person, and by a negative thought I just mean negative thoughts are ones that cause me or someone else suffering. Negative emotion is causing me or someone else suffering. It's not bad. There's positive and there's negative, but relatively it's bad because we want to have more happiness and we want to have less suffering. So if I have an emotional pattern that is perpetuating my suffering and others' suffering, that I could give it the category of negative in that context. So if I'm having a negative emotion towards another person, and often it's to a person I probably love, I'm already suffering. So it's like the ripple is already causing suffering. Yeah. What if I'm having like a loving thought or a compassionate, a love emotion towards another, I'm already feeling happy. I'm already feeling. So that's why Dalai Lama is always saying, if you're going to be selfish, try to be the more wise form of selfish, to practice altruism, to try. That's something we have to cultivate, you know, because our tendencies are not always on board with that. And then we feel, you know, we start to loathe ourselves. This is the real hard part of a yogic path. A yogic path just means any path is to transform the mind into happiness. Therefore, one has to reveal their suffering tendencies and emotional patterns to themselves. Often those are revealed through relationships. And then to work to transform them slowly, baby steps, because there's no other pace you can go. And so little by little, loving more and more. Every opportunity is giving me another possibility, an opportunity to love, and that's why you can even start to be grateful for your enemies. Because only with the presence of an enemy do you have the opportunity to practice the more difficult forms of compassion, and thus the more fruitful forms of compassion. So that's called using difficulties along the path, using your obstacles for the opening, for your blossoming. You know.
Yeah, it goes back to what I was talking about with the mirrors, because I believe that every single relationship that we have is we're either there to teach something to someone else, or someone is coming into our lives to teach us something. So if we're coming from that perspective, then our eyes are always open, and we're always willing and ready to see whatever the mirror is in that moment. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you teach and share about the process of breaking patterns? And you're mentioning this process very esoterically of bringing a little bit more love, and so maybe break it down for us a little bit more, because it's often easy to spot the pattern. It's harder to break it. It's harder to transform it.
That's why we have practices, and that's what Life Course Academy does. It's a combination of really two main things. It's a combination of of meditation practices. Kundalini Yoga are meditation practices. It's like an exercise meditation system to help purify the subconscious mind, help tune up the body, help bring forth the creative glow. So part of that process is that having practices, in this case they're called kriyas, that they definitely facilitate a helpful transformation of the psyche by one, kind of opening up the field of awareness so that one, because what it's called, all of the challenges of the mind are subconscious, or if not all of them, most of them are subconscious. They're the patterns that are underneath the surface. That's why relationships are often revealing them to us, because your significant other sees that thing about us that we can't even see about ourselves. And that's the hard thing. It's like, I got to talk to them about it. That's I think you're going to have a conversation with them. They don't even realize they're doing it. We're all, in that. And so that's subconscious. And so that's why that's what I meant by the hardest part of the yogic practice is to be honest about one's own patterns and to reveal them, but not in a way that it's going to cause, self-deprecation or self-loathing. That's an important thing to shine a light on, because often it's the case that, say like this, the first stage of the yogi's practice, you feel amazing. Like I said, like you're on the precipice. You feel like you're on the precipice of enlightenment. It's like, whoa, you've seen the light. You've heard the gospel. You're going to go knock on some doors and tell somebody about it. And hopefully not try to get them to join your club. Hopefully we're getting past that. But you're going to, you feel inspired, in other words. But then the second part is you feel lousy. Because the new light, or however you want to think about it, field of awareness both reveals like how actually grand things are, and at the same time they also reveal the mental and emotional state that one is in that is obstructing how grand things are. So that's why first you can feel great about yourself, and then second you can kind of feel lousy about yourself. So that's important to know that that's a natural part of the path, because otherwise it'd be easy for me to be convinced that I suck at this, and in general I suck. And all of us, I think, can relate to that feeling. That's why always with everything, with every practice, we put special emphasis on this, is you always open a practice with compassion. Formally, you put a ritual around it. And then you always close the practice with compassion, starting with compassion for one's own predicament, one's own body and mind, and one's own, suffering. And so then if you're actively bringing forth a compassionate response to the feeling of your own suffering, then when those feelings that might have in the past created a lot of self-loathing will be met with more of a self-love. Slowly, baby steps, and it's going to be a mix. But as long as you can start to get some compassion there, you'll have the wisdom to take a bath as opposed to do something that's going to be more destructive that helps you feel good temporarily, but it's going to feel, because that's often when we are self-destructive, is when we're feeling lousy about ourselves and we want to feel better. And so that's part of it. So that's the first part, is the kriya, the practice that is actively working with the chi and the subtle body system and working with the life force to adjust the psyche, to make a shift. Like I was saying earlier, sometimes it's like it felt like there was just in retrospect, once you're on the other side of it, it felt just like there was a short circuit in the system that was causing my perspective to be a little jaded and thus feel horrible or feel totally insecure. And then boom, you get that electricity flowing. Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I got this. Right? Keep going, So the practice is, not only are they doing that, but they're purifying the channels and purifying the tendencies. But the other part of it is, the second part is, I have to be an active participant in it and not just rely on the practices or not just rely on the medicines to do it for me, because that will only take you so far. If you want to plateau, just rely on the practices, just rely on the medicines. That will end up on a plateau. It will take you somewhere, no doubt about it. What it also can do is create spiritual narcissism, because anytime that we're working with things of power, medicines, practices, that which kind of brings forth Shakti, that power can really be hijacked by our subconscious mind in a certain way. It's a dramatic language to use, but it's not a bad way of saying it, because nobody's intending to become pathologically narcissistic, and yet here we are. Mm-hmm. And so even that we should be trying to meet with compassion, because if someone is really, we all have some narcissistic tendencies. And some of us, myself included, can know what it feels like to have the suffering of narcissism. And narcissism is suffering, To be concerned about another is happiness. It comes from happiness, and which feels better, And so that's the second part, is to be actively involved. And it's not just the purification of the negative patterns, but it's the exaltation of the positive ones. So that's why the whole thing's not such a drag, although it's kind of sounding like it right now, because you do have to go through that a little bit. But I think it's important to remember that also things are pretty good exactly as they are, in that you're alive, and that's what they train in the yogic practices, is you have to learn to become or train the mind to be grateful for the very simple things. If I can even feel gratitude for the fact that I do have some food to eat. Mm-hmm. Whatever your predicament is, you're grateful relative to that. And so then you're strengthening your creative side, and you're revealing your brilliance to yourself as well. Mm-hmm. But you're revealing your brilliance to yourself in such a way that you're noticing the brilliance of others. You're not revealing the brilliance of yourself in some way that's kind of taking you with a sense of above others. That's another easy thing to experience, because it's like, whoa, I'm getting all this new awareness and all this new, and like now I kind of see how things are, and all these they're not really seeing it in the same way I am, and so you feel like you're somehow better than. Mm-hmm. And then just like in kindergarten, like when my little boy he's not little anymore, he's a young man, but when he was in like his little preschool, there's like, they called that, or kindergarten, better than complex. Better than, they wouldn't say complex, but there's like, don't use it, we're not using better than language. And us adults, we have to kind of learn that again sometimes. It's like, we're not using better than language. There is no better than. As soon as I'm like, nobody's high and nobody's low, it's something more transcendent of all of that, it's love in all the directions.
Very beautifully said. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. Wow, I love it. And there's so many beautiful elements to what you just shared that really just are so potent and necessary for us who are integrating the spiritual path. And also these practices are so important and helpful for navigating this process of spiritual transformation and learning how to walk this path of expansion and contraction and navigate those moments of, deep connection and having that humility and awareness of relativity there, and then also, not falling into the traps of the mind and letting ourselves, go into those spirals of darkness and feeling forsaken, when things don't feel like they're progressing as fast as we want. We're not seeing the change that we're really craving.
Yeah.
But everything that you're sharing is so parallel to really how we also help people with plant medicine integration too, because we have a whole plant medicine integration learning platform. We have a community to support people who are working with entheogens and plant medicines and translating the wisdom into everyday life. And the way that you're sharing about your practices and your teachings is so parallel in so many ways, because like you said, the plant medicines, the practices, the kriyas, they show us, they let us access that place, right? And so that we know it, so that we can feel that place and recognize it. Because how do we know to where we're aspiring to, or what beauty we're aspiring to create in our life if we have no point of reference, right? So I feel like these tools are so potent for showing us that playing field of where we can exist in all moments. And then we leave the ceremony, or we go home from, our practice and our class, or we go off of our mat, whatever it is, and And then we go back to everyday life. And maybe at the beginning, things feel really good. Or at the beginning of a study and you're starting your yoga and your Kundalini Yoga and you're on that high like you were sharing. Maybe at the beginning, those first few months, you're feeling really good. And then something happens. Or like a few months after plant medicine ceremony, that initial connection and inspiration starts to dim a little bit. Maybe something strong comes up in our lives and we start to question, was that really what I experienced? Because this is so far from that, you know? And like you said, it's easy to get really down in those moments or start to doubt, right? The doubt is such a big part that we navigate and deal with consistently on the path. But really just seeing these sacred practices and tools for what they are as these incredible doorways to show us what's possible and to show us the level of consciousness that we have accessible to us, the way of seeing life and perceiving life, the way of relating to each moment. And then to utilize that, I like to say, like, utilize it as that goalpost, you know, to really evaluate ourselves on the day-to-day of how close are we to that place, you know, and where are the areas of my life that are faltering from being able to exist in that place. But ultimately recognizing that it does take that work, that active engagement, that willingness. You know, how many of us know someone who's been drinking medicine for years, or, you know, has been done all the Kundalini initiations and has been, you know, the yogi for decades, and their life isn't reflecting that, right? And so ultimately it's like this radical responsibility is this element that is really present for me with all of this, is willingness to show up and do the work. And you're right, it's not always fun, right? Sometimes it's really hard, but the results are so beautiful and so nourishing and potent and invigorating, right?
I mean, the path is glorious. The life is difficult. And whether you're going that route or just kind of staying on business as usual, it's going to be difficult either way. You know, you can't escape that. You never can. So yeah, in a certain way, it's just turning towards the suffering so that you can transform it. And so I think that makes it seem, in a certain way, a little more difficult. But I think in essence, it's actually less difficult.
Yes.
Because you're actively doing something about it and you're actively becoming happier. And so there's waves on this thing, you know. It is definitely like a feeling of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, you know. But then you do those little 2-step baby step forward, and then even just a few months of that, you look back and you'll be impressed with how far baby steps take you. But in the moment, sometimes, as you pointed out, it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like things are happening nearly fast enough. Things are not happening when we want them to happen, but they're happening when they should, you know, somehow or another. That's always my sense of it, even though I don't like it a lot of the time. You know, they're happening as they should. And so if I can develop trust in life, you know, trust that underneath the ups and downs, underneath the goods and bads, that there's some sort of a grand intelligence. I'm just not taking that on as a belief system. I'm testing it out. I'm jumping off a little bit of a cliff and testing out my experience. I'm taking a courageous leap of my heart to trust life to take care of me. And then see if it does. And then it won't have to be a belief. It'll be conviction.
My teachers, Taito Juanito from the Inga tribe, he talks a lot about this process of weeding the garden of our mind. And oftentimes people will come after ceremony, maybe 3-6 months after, and they'll be like, the medicine didn't work for me. I don't see the change and the shifts in my life. You said I was healed. You said I received the healing that I came here looking for. What happened? And he always shares, the healing is done. That wound, the pain that was there, the trauma, that it was cleaned. But now you have to tend to the garden. If you don't maintain the fruits and you don't tend to the garden, the weeds will grow back. And so this is an interesting way to really acknowledge that there's upkeep to this cleanliness, right? And this element of the spiritual hygiene. I'm curious how you might talk about this element of the purification of the thought. You know, you mentioned it a little bit, but always, you know, having that vigilance of what we're planting.
Yeah, I like how you said that. I like the tending to the garden. idea, language. I think that's really nice and accurate to how I experience it as well. Yeah, I think it's really about taking care of one's kindness, and I think that when we talk about something like spiritual hygiene, to me, I kind of feel a bit that's what it is, taking care of one's kindness. We could also talk about keeping our channels open, some channels of the mind, channels of the subtle system as well, that all the ancient cultures understand. The subtle system, subtle sensory perceptions, and so forth, taking care of all that. At the end of the day, it's so that we can take care of our kindness, taking care of our subtle systems. It helps us be connected with the interwovenness of life, the bigger mystery of life. Not this always trying to figure it out in some intellectual way, but to be in some sort of really concert or courtship or communion with the very energies of life that are opening us. And sometimes it might bring us to our knees in pain, but you can go down two ways to your knees. You can go down in despair, and you can go down in devotion. And one is more enjoyable than the other. And so in that way, it's still just trying to be happy, and not it needing to be always some rigid philosophies. And because none of the great philosophies are actually rigid at all, but with time we make them so. By putting doctrines on top of them, and good principles over time tend to become doctrines. And a lot of us grew up with doctrines that then we had to kind of escape, and here we are, and then we found something else, but then there starts to form new doctrines, and so everyone's on their own navigating that stuff, but we can help each other with all right, so I think that's also part of like spiritual hygiene, is keeping connectivity to your own experience of things, and therefore I have to keep my channels of perception open so that I'm not clouded so much, and so that I'm not too hypnotized. Because I know already I am relatively hypnotized. I don't even know how hypnotized I am, because, it's inconceivable to me, So I like that. I like hanging out in the mystery, and I like to, for me, it's more enjoyable to not need to know so much, although I love knowledge, I love learning things. But that's more for fascination and enjoyment, and also practicality of how to actually transform the mind from something that is causing more miserableness to something that is causing more blissfulness. And we do have the capacity to experience bliss. And we can live in more and more in that space. And bliss is not some fluffy thing. And bliss is a subtle force. It's that when a person's real genuine bliss encounters another's suffering, that it responds with compassion, And then when that a bliss encounters another's happiness, it responds with joy. And that's what the Buddha called the immeasurables, the boundless attitudes. And it's all rooted in the compassionate heart, But compassion is not just empathy. Compassion is wisdom. Wisdom and love, they call two wings of the same bird. Yeah.
And it's also this choice we have in every moment to choose love, to choose compassion, to continue our suffering. And with our spiritual path too, it's like we can choose to go off the mat and sustain that connection throughout our day, or we can choose and go get fast food, right? And go lower our vibration and undo some of the work that we just did. So it's really like every moment we have this opportunity to make a decision of how we're going to meet what we're given and how we're going to walk from that place of awareness. You spoke about this element of dharma at the beginning. I wanted to bring it back there, especially with the work that you're doing in the world. And it's very easy for a yogi to just walk their yogic path and be connected and walk towards enlightenment. And it's another thing for someone to come out and desire to support so many other people in in finding their way and finding that place of connection, inspiration. How does this role of the Dharma translate into both your life's work as well as how you help people to empower themselves and to bring these teachings into the ways in which they're walking their lives?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. Dharma, using it in, it's a word that can be used in many contexts. And in this context, it's kind of like sense of one's own sense of purpose. Another context, it can mean a dharma is like a vehicle that will take someone towards happiness. Like the Buddha's dharma would be what others might call Buddhism, is the Buddha dharma, and so forth and so on. But so dharma can be like a path. They say the most important translation of dharma is reality itself. That this whole creation is a field of dharma. We all have our unique dharma, and mine is put me in this position for whatever reason or another. We all have our certain things we're skillful at, and this is, since I was a pretty young person, this is what emerged for me. Never had intentions of being a yoga teacher or anything like that, but that's exactly what happened. I was trying to do other things. And it's just kind of worked, right from the get-go. And not that it has always been easy, but it's always worked in a fundamental way, and it has legs, and it keeps, it keeps growing. And there is some sense of mission around it. And although I think of mission and that type of thing a little differently, I think, than I used to when I was younger. And it kind of gave birth to this organization we have, it's Business Life Force Academy, that then the idea is to make this stuff available to people. And I think what we do really well is whether in person or virtual, but what I think we do really well is deliver virtual experiences of these practices and these spaces and these experiences to deliver right to people wherever they are, in a way that's pretty inspired and beautiful, and the music, and it's cinematic, and it's it's got substance, and people love it. And we have people in like over 120 countries in the world now that are in our membership, our membership portal, and we also do free things all the time with most new moons or full moons, and working with the lunar cycles, working with the different planetary cycles to keep a practice in rhythm, because that's what it needs, to keep going on this thing, some consistency. You can have even just one experience of something like Kundalini Yoga can be life-changing and can get somebody, nice and lifted. You feel really good. And yet the real magic of it comes when it's done with some level of consistency over some period of time. And that's what we're really good with, is helping make that really easy for people and guide, and to where it's like, just push play, we'll take care of the rest. You have to show up though.
Beautiful. I love that. You guys are doing it so well. So really,
thank you.
A lot of praise to the incredible organization.
Yeah, I have amazing people around me.
Yeah. I'm sure. I'm sure it's definitely a lot to put together. And no doubt you have an incredible team behind you.
Definitely.
Putting it all together.
100%.
Beautiful. Well, we talk a lot about nature on the show, our relationship to nature and how to be in relationship with nature. And maybe, we're nearing the close of this conversation, but maybe to bring that full circle, you can share a little bit about how these teachings and these practices come into that element of relationship with the earth, our relationship with the plants, the animals, the mineral kingdom. All these practices are here for us to remember that we are not separate, and to remember that we're all connected. And so part of that interconnectedness is to return back to our mother.
Yeah, it's the most natural thing. I think that's why when people start doing yoga practices, for instance, meditation practices, any practice that starts to move the chi, open up the system, increase one's sensitivity, increase one's intuition, we naturally start eating healthier. We naturally feel more connected to the earth. We naturally want to hang out in nature more because we are nature. Our bodies are just as much nature as trees, you know, and that's what we are. Because we're looking at it from our kind of localized perspective, it makes us feel that we're outside of nature somehow. We are nature. We're not separate from it. So by interacting with nature, we're interacting with ourselves, or interacting with what life is really all about. And then we're also tuned for each other. You know, the plants are opposite than the humans in the sense that they're giving out what we need and we're giving out what they need. And they purify for us, and you can take like each plant, you know, in Ayurveda they talk about each plant has what they call the rasa. It has its taste, a sweet, sour, salty, pungent, bitter, astringent, and a combination of those things, and that gives you insight to what is its usefulness going to be. So it has its rasa, then it has what they call its virya, which is its energetic, or does it open things up and warm the channel and dilate the channel, because that's what we all are, as channels, earth, water, fire, air moving through channels of space. Or is it cooling? Does it contract the channel, you know? And therefore start to give you insights. Is it going to kind of be like anti-inflammatory? Is it going to be soothing? Is it going to be stimulating? And then it has what they call its vipak, which is really like its special intelligence. And some herbs have a special affinity for the respiratory system, or the heart muscle, or the sexual system. Some herbs have a special affinity for the mind and for the consciousness. And so the peoples of all over the world have known this stuff, and us in our kind of arrogance of modern scientific mind, and modern scientific mind is incredible, but it often is arrogant as well, to just act like this, what the peoples who have been connected to nature all through it from time immemorial, they not learned something, you know, and maybe something we don't know about so well. So they know all this, and so thank goodness, you know, a lot of this has been preserved, and it's been preserved in systems like Ayurveda and the Chinese medical systems and the healing traditions of different peoples, and it's preserved in the languages. That's why it's so catastrophic when a language starts to die, because inside all of that wisdom that we need to continue to survive on the planet, you know, other nature would take this little human species out. Nature is going to be fine. Whether we're going to be around to observe it in these bodies is questionable. So the plants are our allies, and then when you, as you said earlier, you have a point of reference, and then if you have that bigger point of reference, it gives you a bigger point of reverence. And when you have that, you naturally want to care for these things. It's not something one has to will themselves so much. It's like it was heartbreaking any other way, you know. So it's opening up sensitivity to the reality, the real nature of things, you know, our real nature. One of my other mentors, the great Robert Thurman, said to me once, he said, teachings are great as long as the teacher remembers that the teachings that they are teaching are limited relative to the amazing grace of reality. You know, they'll always come up short, because that has to be experienced. Yeah, it has to come alive. Yeah, then all I can do is smile.
Thank you. I love it. Well, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom and beautiful path with us, and for our beloved community. Just want to invite you all to check out the Life Force Academy. It's an incredible platform, and especially, you know, for those who resonate with some of the conversations and the topics that we touched on today, and are interested in some really tangible tools and resources, practices to navigate and to move through, and to orient ourselves on this path. Check it out. We'll have all of your links in the show notes for people, and if there's anything specific you want to bring people's attention to, or any final words to share with our listeners before we go.
Just check us out. They can type in lifeforce.yoga into the browser. That takes us to the website. Life Force Academy on social, or mine is Jaidev 108, Jaidev 108. And yeah, we all we're on there. We keep in touch with everyone. We interact with everyone. We'd love to connect with folks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
On behalf of the Four Visions family, we want to thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope you have enjoyed this conversation and have gained seeds of wisdom that will nourish your spiritual path. If you have a moment, please leave us a review, as this helps us to reach more people. For more resources and information about the plant path, and for the highest quality spiritual tools and botanicals, please visit us at fourvisions.com. We are grateful for your support and look forward to continuing this journey with you all. Until next time.